The night was thick with an inky darkness as Jake drove down the desolate highway. The only sounds that pierced the silence were the rhythmic hum of the engine and the occasional swish of the wind against the trees that lined the road. He had been on the road for hours, his destination nothing more than a distant blur on the horizon. As he drove, a dense fog began to roll in, clinging to the road like ghostly fingers. Jake squinted through the windshield, the visibility diminishing with each passing mile. The road seemed to stretch on forever, a ribbon of asphalt disappearing into the mist. Suddenly, out of the gloom, a figure emerged. It was a woman, dressed in a tattered white gown, standing at the edge of the road. Jake slammed on the brakes, the tires screeching in protest. The woman's pale face was obscured by long, disheveled hair that hung like a curtain around her face. With a shiver crawling down his spine, Jake reluctantly rolled down the window. The woman's voice was a whisper, carried by the wind. "Help me, please." A feeling of unease settled in Jake's stomach, but he couldn't ignore the desperation in her eyes. She claimed her car had broken down, and she needed a ride to the nearest town. Against his better judgment, Jake hesitated for a moment before reluctantly agreeing to help. The woman climbed into the passenger seat, her presence sending a chill through the car. As they drove through the thickening fog, Jake tried to make small talk, but the woman remained eerily silent. He stole glances at her, noticing the way her eyes seemed to reflect the passing headlights like a feline caught in the dark. As they approached the outskirts of the town, the woman suddenly pointed to a dilapidated mansion looming in the mist. "Stop here," she whispered. Confused, Jake pulled over, the creaking gates of the mansion eerily swinging open on their own. The woman stepped out of the car, her figure disappearing into the fog that surrounded the mansion. Jake, his curiosity getting the better of him, followed her. The mansion's interior was as haunting as its exterior. Dust-covered furniture, cobwebs, and a pervasive sense of decay filled the air. The woman led Jake through the mansion's labyrinthine corridors, her ghostly white gown billowing behind her. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. Shadows seemed to come alive, whispering secrets that sent shivers down Jake's spine. He realized he was not alone. The mansion was filled with ghostly apparitions, their faces twisted in agony. Panicking, Jake tried to retrace his steps, but the corridors seemed to twist and turn, leading him deeper into the heart of the mansion. The whispers grew louder, echoing with the pain and sorrow of those who had met their demise within those walls. As the ghostly figures closed in, their faces contorted in anguish, Jake stumbled upon a room at the end of a narrow hallway. The door slammed shut behind him, leaving him in pitch darkness. In the silence that followed, the air grew heavy with the weight of the mansion's dark secrets. Suddenly, a flickering light illuminated the room, revealing the woman standing in the center. Her once serene expression contorted into a sinister grin, and her eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. The room seemed to pulse with malevolence as the ghostly figures pressed against the walls, their mournful wails filling the air. Realization struck Jake like a bolt of lightning. The woman was not a victim. She was a harbinger of the mansion's haunting, a spectral force that lured unsuspecting travelers to their doom. The walls of the room seemed to close in, and Jake's heartbeat echoed in his ears as the ghostly figures closed in, their bony fingers reaching out. The last thing Jake heard was the woman's haunting laughter as the room consumed him, leaving nothing but an empty, echoing darkness. The mansion, satisfied with its latest victim, settled back into an eerie stillness, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to wander into its web of terror.